My name is Zara Mitchell, and I used to believe that love could conquer anything. I was wrong, dead wrong, for 6 years. I built the most successful luxury wedding planning company in Manhattan. Eternal Moments was my baby, my dream turned into a $1 million empire. I orchestrated fairy tale weddings for the city's elite. Tech moguls, Wall Street titans, fashion designers, and real estate royalty. Every weekend, I turned their wildest dreams into breathtaking reality. Jake Morrison was supposed to be my forever. We met at the Plaza Hotel during one of my biggest events, a $300,000 wedding for a pharmaceutical heiress. He was charming, successful, and swept me off my feet with his real estate empire and devastating smile. 6 months later, he proposed with a ring that cost more than most people's cars. Our wedding was set for the 15th of October at the Rainbow Room. I had planned every detail obsessively, the same way I planned for my clients. But this time it was personal. The flowers alone cost $50,000. Everything was perfect, everything except the groom. 2 weeks before our wedding, I was working late at my office finalizing the seating chart for our reception. The guest list read like a who is who of New York society. Every single one of my wealthy clients would be there. It was going to be the networking event of the decade, cementing my reputation forever. That is when my assistant Emma burst through the door, her face pale as winter. "Zara, you need to see this," she whispered, holding out her phone with trembling hands. The Instagram story showed Jake at Le Bernardin, our anniversary restaurant. But he wasn't alone. Victoria Ashford, my biggest client and supposed best friend, was sitting across from him. They were holding hands across the table, laughing intimately, completely lost in each other. My world tilted. Victoria was married to Richard Ashford, the hedge fund king. I had planned their $800,000 wedding just 2 years ago. She called me twice a week, not about business, but to chat like girlfriends. We went shopping together, had spa days, shared secrets. She was supposed to be my maid of honor. I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. Jake's hand was stroking her wrist, the same gesture he used to calm me during stressful client meetings. Victoria wore the pearl necklace I had helped Jake pick out for her last Christmas. Thinking it was a friendly gift, the betrayal cut deeper than any knife. I drove to Jake's penthouse apartment, our apartment, with Emma's words echoing in my head. "How long do you think this has been going on?" Jake wasn't home. His doorman Luis looked uncomfortable when he saw me. "Mr. Morrison left this morning with luggage, Miss Mitchell," he said quietly. "He said he was going on a business trip." Busyness trip. The lies were piling up like snow in a blizzard. I let myself into the apartment with my key, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. The place felt different, empty, hollow. Jake's closet was half empty, his favorite watch, the one I gave him for his birthday, was gone. Even his cologne bottle was missing from the bathroom counter. On the kitchen island, I found an envelope with my name written in Jake's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper and our joint bank account statement. The letter was brief, brutal. Zara, I can't do this anymore. Victoria and I are leaving for Switzerland tonight. We're going to start fresh somewhere new. I've taken what I need from our accounts to begin again. The apartment lease is in your name, so you'll be responsible for it. I hope you understand. The bank statement showed our joint account, the one containing $400,000 of my business profits that I had moved there for our wedding expenses, was completely empty, every penny gone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when I checked my business accounts. Jake had been a co-signer since our engagement. For security purposes, he said. Those accounts were empty too. 6 years of building my company, $1.2 million in operating capital, client deposits for upcoming weddings, everything was gone. He hadn't just broken my heart, he had systematically destroyed my entire life. I collapsed onto the cold marble floor of our kitchen, the weight of the devastation crushing my chest. In one day, I had lost my fiancé, my best friend, my business, and my future. The wedding invitations sat in neat stacks on the counter, mocking me with their elegant script. But Jake Morrison had made one crucial mistake. He thought he knew me. He thought I was just another heartbroken woman who would crumble and disappear quietly. He was wrong. The next morning, I canceled our wedding with the professionalism of a surgeon. I called every vendor, every venue coordinator, every florist. I absorbed the cancellation fees, money I didn't have. Rather than let the gossip spread that I had been abandoned, I told everyone there was a family emergency. Only Emma knew the truth, and Emma was fiercely loyal. "What are you going to do?" she asked as we sat in my empty office, surrounded by client files I could no longer fulfill. "I am going to survive," I said. "But first, I am going to remember something very important." "What is that?" I opened my laptop and pulled up my client database, 6 years worth of New York's most powerful families' deepest secrets. Wedding planners see everything. We're invisible during the planning process, but we hear every whispered conversation, every family drama, every dirty secret. I know where all the bodies are buried. Emma. Victoria Ashford thought she had won by stealing my fiancé and my money. But Victoria had forgotten something crucial. I had planned her wedding. I knew about her affairs, her husband's tax evasion schemes, her mother-in-law's secret gambling addiction, her brother's drug problems. Jake Morrison thought he was clever, taking my money and disappearing, but Jake had forgotten that I had organized events for his business partners. I knew about his father's illegal real estate deals, his competitors' bribes, his accountant's creative bookkeeping. Every single one of my elite clients had trusted me with their family secrets because they thought I was harmless, just a sweet wedding planner who would never use what I knew. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I spent the next 3 days creating my masterpiece, an anonymous blog called Confessions of a Manhattan Wedding Planner. The first post went live on a Tuesday morning. Dear readers, I've spent 6 years planning fairy tale weddings for New York's elite. I've seen their happiest moments, but I've also seen their darkest secrets today. I am going to start sharing what really happens behind the designer gowns and million-dollar receptions. Names will be changed to protect. Well, nobody. Let's start with Mrs. A, whose lavish wedding made headlines 2 years ago. What the society pages didn't mention was that the bride was already married to someone else. A marriage that was never legally dissolved. Bigamy is such an ugly word, don't you think? I hit publish and watched the analytics climb. Within hours, the post had 10,000 views by evening. It had 50,000. The comments section exploded with speculation about which society wedding I was referencing. Victoria's phone started ringing that night. The second post dropped 2 days later. Today's confession involves Mr. M, a real estate mogul who recently made headlines for his successful project in Tribeca. What he didn't disclose to his investors was that his father's construction company used substandard materials, materials that are slowly causing structural damage to buildings across Manhattan. The city inspectors never found out because Mr. Mem's accountant has been paying them off for years. Corruption is such a family business, isn't it? Jake's lawyer called me within 6 hours. "Miss Mitchell." The voice was smooth, threatening. "My client would like to discuss a resolution to your recent creative endeavors." "Tell your client that I am just getting started," I replied, and hung up. The third post was my masterpiece. This week's story is about young love, specifically, Mr. M and Mrs. A, who thought their affair was secret. Mrs. A convinced Mr. M to steal $1.6 million from his ex-fiancé's business accounts so they could start fresh in Switzerland. What they didn't know is that Switzerland has very strict banking laws about accepting stolen funds. Even more interesting, Mrs. A's husband, Mr. A, has been tracking her movements through a private investigator for months. He is planning to file for divorce and criminal charges as soon as she returns to us soil. Love is blind, but justice has perfect vision. That post broke the internet. Within 12 hours, it had 200,000 views, and was being shared across every social media platform. The New York Post picked up the story. Page 6 started investigating. My phone rang at 3 a.m. Zara. Victoria's voice was panicked, desperate. "Please, we need to talk." "We needed to talk 3 weeks ago," I said calmly. "Before you decided to destroy my life. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Jake said you would understand, that you'd move on. Jake was wrong about a lot of things. The blog, you have to stop the blog. People know it is about us." "Richard's lawyers are what, Victoria, going to prosecute you for bigamy, or theft, or adultery?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "What do you want?" she whispered. I want my money back, every penny. I want a public apology, and I want you both to face the consequences of what you've done. We can't come back to New York. Richard will have us arrested. Then you shouldn't have stolen from me. I hung up and published my 4th post that morning. * plot twist. Dear readers, Mrs. A called me last night, begging me to stop telling the truth. She is currently hiding in a Swiss chalet, afraid to return home because her husband has evidence of her crimes. Mr. M is with her, but their paradise is more like a prison. Turns out, stolen money doesn't buy happiness, just creates more problems. Who would have thought? The media frenzy was incredible. Entertainment Tonight picked up the story. The Wall Street Journal wrote about financial crimes in high society. The FBI started investigating the money trail, but I wasn't finished. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically destroyed the reputations of everyone who had ever wronged me or my other clients. I published stories about tax evasion, money laundering, domestic violence, drug abuse, and corruption. Each post was carefully crafted to reveal just enough truth to cause maximum damage, without crossing into libel. The beauty was that every word was true. I had witnessed it all firsthand. My blog became the most read gossip site in Manhattan. Advertisers started reaching out. Book publishers called with offers. Netflix wanted to buy the rights to my story. From the ashes of my destroyed wedding business, I was building a media empire. The end came faster than I expected. Victoria and Jake lasted exactly 23 days in Switzerland before Richard Ashford's private investigators found them. Swiss authorities froze their accounts pending an investigation into money laundering. They were given 48 hours to leave the country or face international charges. They had no choice but to return to New York. I watched the news coverage from my new penthouse apartment, purchased with the advance from my book deal. Victoria looked haggard, broken, nothing like the polished socialite who used to lunch with me at the Met. Jake was in handcuffs, his real estate empire crumbling as investors pulled out and the SEC investigated his family's business practices. They were both arrested at JFK Airport. The trial was a media circus. I testified as a witness, not as a victim, because I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor who had turned her pain into power. Jake was sentenced to 8 years for theft and fraud. Victoria got 6 years for conspiracy and bigamy. Their assets were seized to pay restitution to their victims, including me. I got every penny back, plus damages. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was sitting in the back of that courtroom, watching Jake's face as the judge read the sentence. He looked around the room desperately, probably hoping to find someone who still believed in his innocence. His eyes met mine across the crowded room. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply mouthed 4 words that made his face go pale. I told you so. As the bailiffs led him away in shackles, I stood up and walked out of the courthouse with my head high. The reporters waiting outside bombarded me with questions, but I had only one statement. Justice isn't about revenge. It is about truth, and the truth always wins in the end. 6 months later, my book Confessions of a Manhattan Wedding Planner hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. The Netflix series is in production. I've been invited to speak at business conferences about turning adversity into opportunity. I am no longer planning weddings. I am too busy running my media company and writing my 2nd book. But sometimes, when I walk past the Plaza Hotel or the Rainbow Room, I remember the woman I used to be. The woman who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. I don't believe in fairy tales anymore, but I believe in something better. I believe in the power of truth, the strength of survival, and the sweet satisfaction of justice served cold. Jake Morrison and Victoria Ashford thought they could destroy me with their betrayal. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift of all. They showed me exactly how strong I could be when everything was taken away. They thought they were writing my ending. Instead, they helped me write my beginning. And unlike their story, mine has a truly happy ending, one I created myself, one word at a time, one truth at a time, until the whole world knew exactly who they really were. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it is simply letting people see the truth about themselves in broad daylight, with nowhere left to hide. I never saw Jake or Victoria again after the trial. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Jake's family disowned him, that Victoria's marriage was annulled, that they both filed for bankruptcy while serving their sentences. I felt nothing when I heard these updates, not satisfaction, not pity, not anger. They had become irrelevant to my story, footnotes in a chapter I had already closed. Today, I am writing this from my office in a Manhattan skyscraper, looking down at the city that once seemed ready to swallow me whole. I am no longer the naive romantic who believed that love conquers all. I am a woman who learned that the only person you can truly count on is yourself, and that is not a weakness, it is a superpower. The phone on my desk is ringing constantly with new opportunities, new projects, new adventures. Publishers want my next book. Producers want to option my story. Business schools want me to teach courses on crisis management and reinvention. But the most satisfying calls are from women. Women who read my story and found the courage to leave toxic relationships, to start over after betrayal, to turn their pain into purpose. They call to thank me for showing them that survival isn't just possible, it is profitable. Because that is the real secret Jake and Victoria never understood. When someone tries to destroy you, they're not just creating an enemy, they're creating a storyteller, and the best storytellers are the ones who lived through the darkness and chose to turn on the lights. My story isn't a cautionary tale about love and betrayal, it is a blueprint for transformation, a manual for turning your worst day into your greatest triumph. But let me tell you about the day that truly changed everything. The day I realized my power wasn't just in knowing secrets, but in understanding people's deepest fears and desires. It was 3 months after Jake and Victoria's arrest, and I was rebuilding my life piece by piece. I had moved out of Jake's apartment and into a modest studio in Soho. My business accounts were still frozen pending the investigation, so I was living off the advance from a all article I'd sold to Vanity Fair. I was having coffee at my usual spot, a small cafe on Spring Street, where the baristas knew me as the lady who always ordered a double shot when she walked in. Charlotte Pemberton, old money older than dirt, and one of the most influential socialites in Manhattan. I had planned her daughter's wedding 3 years ago, a $2 million extravaganza in the Hamptons that had been featured in 5 magazines. Charlotte walked straight to my table, her Hermes bag clutched like a weapon, her face a mask of controlled panic. "Miss Mitchell," she said, sliding into the chair across from me without invitation, "we need to talk." I set down my coffee and studied her face. Charlotte Pemberton never looked anything less than impeccable, but today, her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her usually perfect hair showed traces of gray at the roots. "About what, Mrs. Pemberton?" "About your..." The word came out like she was tasting something bitter. "People are talking, they're trying to figure out who your subjects are. My daughter's name has been mentioned." I leaned back in my chair. "Your daughter's wedding was beautiful. Everyone said so. That is not what I am worried about." Charlotte's voice dropped to a whisper. "It is about the other things, the things you might have observed." Ah, now we were getting to the heart of it. During Melissa Pemberton's wedding weekend, I had witnessed something that would have destroyed the family's reputation if it ever became public. Charlotte's husband, Melissa's stepfather, had been embezzling money from his investment clients for years, using the funds to maintain their lavish lifestyle. I had overheard a heated phone conversation between Charlotte and her husband's lawyer, discussing strategies to hide the money trail. "Mrs. Pemberton," I said carefully, "I don't know what you think I might have seen. Don't," her voice was sharp, "don't insult my intelligence. You were there that weekend, you heard the phone calls, you saw the documents in James's study." I had indeed seen the documents, financial statements, offshore account numbers, client lists, all spread across James Pemberton's mahogany desk, while I was delivering the final headcount for the rehearsal dinner. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Charlotte opened her purse and pulled out a check. The amount written on it made my eyes widen, $500,000. "I want your discretion," she said, permanently. I stared at the check. $500,000 would solve all my immediate problems. I could restart my business, move to a better apartment, hire the best lawyers to go after Jake and Victoria. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. But it was also everything I had sworn not to become. "Mrs. Pemberton," I said, pushing the check back across the table, "I am not a blackmailer." Her face showed genuine surprise. "Then what do you want?" I want justice for everyone who has been hurt by people who think money makes them untouchable. Charlotte's expression hardened. You have no idea what you are playing with. Young lady, my husband's business associates are not the kind of people you want as enemies. Are you threatening me? I am warning you, some secrets are dangerous to know. She stood up, leaving the check on the table. Think carefully about your choices, Miss Mitchell. That offer won't remain open indefinitely. After she left, I sat staring at the check for a long time. Part of me was tempted, not by the money itself, but by the easy path it represented. I could take Charlotte's money, disappear from New York, start over somewhere quiet and safe, but that would mean letting Jake and Victoria win. It would mean letting all the corrupt, powerful people I knew continue hurting innocent victims. I tore up the check and threw it in the trash. That evening, I received a package at my apartment. No return address, just my name, written in block letters on brown paper. Inside was a single newspaper clipping from the business section, Pemberton Investment Group, under C investigation for client fund misappropriation. Someone else had brought down James Pemberton, someone with more power than Charlotte's money and more reach than her threats. My phone rang. Unknown number, Miss Mitchell. This is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to speak with you about some of your former clients. The meeting took place in a nondescript federal building in Lower Manhattan. Agent Chen was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded me of myself, before Jake destroyed my faith in people. We've been following your blog, she said without preamble. Interesting reading. It is all true. We believe you. That is why we're here. She opened a thick file. We've been investigating financial crimes among New York's elite for 2 years. Your blog has provided valuable leads. But we need more than anonymous stories. We need witnesses. What kind of witnesses? The kind who were present at private events where illegal activities were discussed. The kind who might have documentation, photographs, recorded conversations. Her eyes met mine. The kind who planned intimate gatherings where people felt safe enough to incriminate themselves. I understood. They wanted me to become an informant. What is in it for me? Justice, Agent Chen said. Real justice, not just public humiliation. Prison sentences, asset forfeiture, victims getting their money back. And, she paused. Witness protection if you need it. Over the next 6 months, I worked with the FBI to build cases against a dozen of New York's most corrupt power players. I provided documentation I had collected during wedding planning, introduced them to other vendors who had witnessed illegal activities, helped them understand the social networks that enabled white-collar crime. The arrests came in waves. James Pemberton was the first handcuffed at his country club during Sunday brunch. Then came Marcus Rothwell, the pharmaceutical executive who had been selling diluted cancer drugs to increase profits. Margaret Sinclair, the art dealer who had been money laundering for the Russian mob through her gallery. Each arrest made headlines. Each conviction sent shockwaves through Manhattan's elite circles, and each successful prosecution added another chapter to my story, not just of personal revenge, but of systematic justice. The media called it the wedding planner takedown. I became the face of whistleblowing, the woman who proved that no amount of money or social status could protect criminals from the truth. But the real satisfaction came from the victims who got their lives back. Pensioners who recovered their stolen retirement funds, cancer patients who received properly formulated medications, artists who got fair payment for their work. Jake and Victoria had tried to destroy me, but in doing so, they had accidentally created something more powerful than they could have imagined. A woman who understood that real power doesn't come from having secrets, but from using them to protect the innocent. My second book, The Last Dance: How I Brought Down Manhattan's Most Corrupt Elite, spent 18 weeks on the bestseller list. The movie rights sold for 7 figures. I started a consulting firm helping other whistleblowers navigate the legal and media landscape. But the most meaningful moment came 2 years after everything began, at a small cafe in Brooklyn where I was meeting with a young woman who had been defrauded by her employer. I read your story, she said, tears in her eyes. You gave me the courage to report what I saw, to fight back instead of staying quiet. That is when I realized that Jake Morrison and Victoria Ashford hadn't just given me a new career. They had given me a purpose. They had turned me into the kind of person who stands up for others who can't stand up for themselves. As I sat in that Brooklyn cafe, listening to another woman find her voice, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my wedding was cancelled. Genuine happiness. Not the temporary high of revenge or the shallow satisfaction of success, but the deep lasting contentment that comes from knowing you are making a real difference in the world. Jake is scheduled to be released from prison in 6 years, Victoria in 4. When they get out, they'll find a world where their names are synonymous with betrayal and theft. Their former friends won't take their calls, their professional networks will have moved on. They'll have to start over with nothing, just like I did. The difference is, when I started over, I built something meaningful. When they start over, they'll just be two middle-aged ex-convicts with nothing to offer but cautionary tales. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret the choices I made, if I ever wonder what would have happened if I had just taken Charlotte Pemberton's money and disappeared. The answer is no. Never, not for a second. Because I learned something that Jake and Victoria will never understand. True power doesn't come from taking things away from people. It comes from giving them back their voice, their dignity, their faith that justice is possible, and that is a lesson worth more than all the money and all the Swiss bank accounts in the world. Today, I am not planning weddings anymore. I am planning something much better. A future where people like Jake Morrison and Victoria Ashford can't destroy lives without consequences, where victims have advocates, where the truth has power. That is my happy ending. Not a fairy tale, not a romance, but something real and lasting and mine. And unlike their story, it is far from over.